I'm sitting here at 3 a.m. with a bottle of wine that's almost empty and a rage inside me that's been building for the past 2 weeks since I discovered what my so-called best friend did to me. And I need to get this out before I explode, or do something that might land me in jail, because the betrayal is so deep and so calculated that I'm honestly questioning whether I ever really knew the people I trusted most in my life. My name is Jessica. I'm 29 years old, and 3 months ago, I went through the most devastating breakup of my life, when my boyfriend of 5 years told me he didn't love me anymore, and walked out without any real explanation, leaving me absolutely shattered and barely functional. And the one person I leaned on through that nightmare, my best friend since college named Amanda, used my vulnerability and heartbreak as an opportunity to systematically steal the first man I tried to date after my breakup, and she did it so deliberately and manipulatively that I didn't even see it happening until it was too late, and now I'm about to burn down her entire life the way she tried to burn down mine. Let me start from the beginning so you understand the full scope of this betrayal, and why what I'm planning to do feels not just justified, but necessary for my own sense of justice and closure. I met my ex-boyfriend Tyler when I was 24, and we had what I thought was a solid, loving relationship for 5 years where we built a life together, talked about marriage and kids, and created a future that felt secure and real. But about 4 months ago, completely out of nowhere, Tyler came home from work one evening and told me he needed to talk, and those 4 words sent ice through my veins, because nothing good ever follows that opening. He sat me down and said, "Jessica, I don't know how to say this, but I'm not happy anymore. I haven't been happy for a while, and I think we need to break up." I was completely blindsided because there had been no warning signs, no major fights, no distance or coldness that would have indicated our relationship was in trouble. I asked him what happened, what changed, whether there was someone else, and he just kept saying, "It's not you, it's me. I just don't feel the same way anymore, and I think we both deserve to be with people who are all in." He moved out that weekend, taking his stuff and leaving me alone in our apartment with all these memories and plans that suddenly meant nothing, and I fell apart completely. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, called in sick to work for a week straight, and spent most of my time crying and trying to understand what I'd done wrong, or how I'd missed the signs that he was checking out of our relationship. Amanda was my rock during that time, or at least that's what I thought. She'd been my best friend since sophomore year of college, when we were randomly assigned as roommates and clicked immediately, and over the past 11 years we'd been through everything together, breakups and job losses and family drama, and all the ups and downs of your 20s. She came over almost every day during those first few weeks after Tyler left, bringing me food and tissues, and letting me cry on her shoulder while I processed the grief and shock of losing someone I thought I'd spend my life with. She'd say things like, "You're going to get through this, you're so strong and amazing, and any guy would be lucky to have you," and I believed her because she was my best friend, and I trusted her completely. About 6 weeks after the breakup, Amanda suggested I try to get back out there and start dating again, saying that the best way to get over someone is to meet new people and remember that there are other options beyond the person who broke your heart. I wasn't sure I was ready, but she insisted, saying she'd help me set up a dating app profile and we could make it fun, like a project to rebuild my confidence. So we spent an evening taking cute photos and writing a bio, and Amanda was so supportive and encouraging, helping me swipe through potential matches, and hyping me up when I'd get messages from guys who seemed interesting. That's how I met Connor, a 31-year-old architect who seemed funny and kind and genuinely interested in getting to know me beyond just surface-level conversation. We matched on the app and started talking, and after about a week of messaging back and forth, he asked me out for coffee. I was nervous as hell because it was my first date since Tyler, and I felt rusty and scared of getting hurt again, but Amanda talked me through it, helping me pick out an outfit, and giving me a pep talk before I left. She said, "You've got this, go have fun and don't put pressure on yourself, just see if you like him and enjoy getting to know someone new." The date with Connor went better than I could have hoped. He was charming and attentive, asked thoughtful questions about my life and interests, and made me laugh in ways I hadn't laughed in weeks. We ended up talking for 3 hours, way past the point where coffee was a reasonable excuse to still be sitting in the cafe, and when he walked me to my car, he asked if he could see me again. I said yes without hesitation, feeling this flutter of hope and excitement that maybe I could move on from Tyler, maybe there was happiness waiting for me with someone new who actually wanted to be with me. I told Amanda everything about the date, gushing about how great Connor was and how he'd made me feel seen and valued in ways Tyler hadn't toward the end of our relationship. Amanda seemed genuinely happy for me, saying, "See, I told you there were good guys out there. I'm so glad you're putting yourself back out there." Connor and I went on 3 more dates over the next 2 weeks, and each one was better than the last. We had this natural chemistry and compatibility that made me think maybe this could turn into something real, and for the first time since the breakup, I felt like myself again, like I had a future to look forward to instead of just grieving the past. But then things started to get weird in ways I didn't understand at the time, but now make perfect, horrible sense. After my 4th date with Connor, I texted Amanda to fill her in on how it went, and she responded with, "That's great. Hey, random question, but does Connor have social media? I want to make sure he's not some weirdo before you get too invested." I thought it was sweet that she was looking out for me, so I sent her his Instagram handle, and she said she'd do some light stalking to make sure he seemed legit. She texted me back saying he seemed normal, and that I should keep seeing him, and I didn't think anything of it. What I didn't know was that Amanda had taken that Instagram handle and started following Connor herself, not just to check him out for my benefit, but because she'd decided she wanted him for herself. Over the next few weeks, while Connor and I were continuing to date and getting closer, Amanda was apparently sliding into his DMs, liking all his photos, and starting conversations with him about architecture and design, pretending she was interested in his work. Connor mentioned to me casually at one point that my friend Amanda had reached out and they'd been chatting about some design project she claimed to be working on, and I thought it was nice that my best friend and new boyfriend were getting along. I was so stupid and trusting, so blind to what was actually happening, that I didn't see Amanda's manipulation for what it was until it was too late. She started suggesting we all hang out together, the 3 of us, saying it would be fun for her to get to know Connor since he was becoming important to me. We did group hangs a few times, going to bars or restaurants, or just watching movies at my apartment, and Amanda was always so charming and funny, making Connor laugh and engaging him in these deep conversations about art and culture, and all the things she knew he was interested in based on stalking his social media. I noticed that Connor seemed to really enjoy Amanda's company, but I thought it was great that my boyfriend and best friend were becoming friends too, that we could all hang out together, and it wouldn't be awkward or forced. What I didn't notice, because I was too busy being happy and hopeful about my new relationship, was that Amanda was actively flirting with Connor in front of me, touching his arm when she laughed at his jokes, finding excuses to sit next to him instead of across from him, complimenting him constantly in ways that went beyond friendly and into something more suggestive. About 2 months into dating Connor, he started being less available and responsive than he had been at the beginning. He'd take longer to text back, cancel plans occasionally saying work was busy, and seemed a bit distracted when we were together. I figured it was just the natural cooling off that happens when the initial excitement of a new relationship settles into something more comfortable, and I didn't push it because I didn't want to seem needy or insecure so early on. But there was this nagging feeling in my gut that something wasn't right, that his energy had shifted in a way I couldn't quite pinpoint. Then about 3 weeks ago, Connor asked if we could meet for coffee to talk, and I got that same sinking feeling I'd had when Tyler had used those exact words months earlier. I met him at the same cafe where we'd had our first date, which felt like some kind of cruel irony, and he looked uncomfortable and guilty before he even started speaking. He said, "Jessica, I need to be honest with you about something. I really like you and I've enjoyed getting to know you, but I think I've developed feelings for someone else, and I don't think it's fair to keep seeing you when my head and heart are somewhere else." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, like I was reliving the trauma of Tyler's breakup all over. And I asked him who it was, this person he'd developed feelings for. He hesitated, and I knew in that moment before he even said her name, I just knew. And when he said, "It's Amanda. I'm so sorry. I know she's your best friend and this is a horrible situation, but we've gotten really close over the past few weeks and there's this connection between us that I can't ignore." I thought I was going to be sick right there in the cafe. I said, "Amanda? My Amanda. My best friend who I introduced you to. You developed feelings for her while you were dating me." He had the decency to look ashamed, saying, "I know how this sounds, and I know it's shitty timing and a shitty situation, but I can't help how I feel. She and I have been talking a lot, and there's just something there that I don't want to ignore. I wanted to be honest with you instead of cheating or lying about it." I said, "How noble of you to break up with me before fucking my best friend. Should I give you an award for basic human decency?" He flinched at my tone and said, "Jessica, I'm sorry, I really am, but I think in the long run you'll be glad I was honest instead of dragging this out." I left that cafe in a daze, and the first thing I did was call Amanda, because surely she would be as shocked and horrified as I was that Connor had developed feelings for her. Surely she would shut that down immediately and tell him to stay away from her out of loyalty to me. She answered on the second ring, and I said, "Amanda, I need to tell you something insane. Connor just broke up with me and said he has feelings for you. Can you believe that? This is so awkward and weird." There was this long pause on the other end of the line, and then she said in this small voice, "Jess, I need to tell you something. Connor and I have been talking a lot, and I think I have feelings for him too. I'm so sorry, I never meant for this to happen, but there's this connection between us and I can't just ignore it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing, couldn't process that my best friend was essentially confirming that she'd been emotionally involved with the guy I was dating, behind my back, while pretending to be supportive of our relationship. I said, "What the fuck are you talking about? You've been talking to Connor behind my back. You've been developing feelings for him while he was my boyfriend, and you were supposed to be my friend." She got defensive immediately, saying, "It's not like that. We just became friends and then it turned into something more. Neither of us planned for this to happen, it just did. And honestly, Jess, you guys had only been dating for 2 months, it's not like you were engaged or married, so it's not that big of a deal." Not that big of a deal. My best friend of 11 years and the first guy I'd dated after my devastating breakup had apparently been carrying on some kind of emotional affair behind my back, and she was telling me it wasn't that big of a deal. I said, "You're supposed to be my best friend. You're supposed to have my back and look out for me, not steal the guy I'm dating while I'm still recovering from having my heart broken 3 months ago. How could you do this to me?" She said, "I'm not stealing him, Jess, you can't steal a person, he made his own choice about who he wants to be with. And I'm sorry that it hurts you, but I can't help who I have feelings for. I hope eventually you'll understand and be happy for us." I hung up on her and spent the next 3 days in bed, calling in sick to work again, and feeling like my entire life was imploding for the second time in 3 months. The betrayal from Amanda hurt even more than losing Connor, because Connor and I had only known each other for 2 months, but Amanda had been my best friend for over a decade, through college and early career struggles and family deaths and all the moments that bond people together. She'd seen me at my lowest after Tyler left, had held me while I cried and promised me that I'd find someone better, and then she'd turned around and taken the first person who made me feel hopeful again, and she'd done it deliberately and without any apparent guilt or concern for how it would affect me. But my devastation turned to rage when I started piecing together the timeline and realizing just how calculated Amanda's betrayal had been. I went back through our text messages and saw all the times she'd encouraged me to tell her about Connor, to share details about our dates, and what we talked about, and what I liked about him, and I realized she'd been gathering intelligence to use against me, figuring out what Connor liked and what he was looking for so she could position herself as the better option. I remembered all the group hangs, where she dominated conversations with Connor while I sat there thinking it was great they were getting along, and I realized she'd been actively pursuing him right in front of me while pretending to be the supportive best friend. I also discovered, through some social media stalking of my own, that Amanda and Connor had been talking privately for weeks before he broke up with me, based on comments she'd left on his photos and posts that referenced inside jokes and conversations I hadn't been part of. They'd been building an emotional intimacy behind my back, while both of them maintained the facade of appropriate boundaries. And once their connection was strong enough, Connor had discarded me to pursue her without any of the guilt or complications of actual cheating. It was all so cold and calculated, and the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I spent about a week processing this rage and hurt, and then I started planning my response, because I wasn't going to let Amanda and Connor just ride off into the sunset together without any consequences for what they'd done. I know some people think the best revenge is living well and moving on, but those people have probably never been betrayed by their best friend in such a calculated, cruel way, and I needed Amanda to understand that actions have consequences, and that you can't just destroy people without expecting them to fight back. First, I reached out to Amanda's boyfriend, a guy named Mark, who she'd been dating on and off for the past year. They were currently off, which I realized was probably why Amanda had felt free to pursue Connor, but Mark didn't know about any of this and still considered Amanda someone he might get back together with eventually. I asked him to meet me for coffee, saying I needed to talk to him about Amanda, and when we sat down I laid out everything that had happened, the timeline of her pursuing Connor, the way she'd manipulated the situation, and the fact that she'd been emotionally cheating on Mark during one of their on-periods earlier this year. Mark was furious, as I'd expected, and he said, "I knew something was off with her lately, she's been distant and weird, but I thought she was just stressed about work. I can't believe she'd do something like this." I showed him screenshots of some of Amanda's social media interactions with Connor that overlapped with when she and Mark were supposedly together, and I could see his jaw clenching as he processed the betrayal. He said, "What are you going to do about this?" And I said, "I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of person she really is, and I'd appreciate your help with that." Together, Mark and I crafted a detailed post outlining what Amanda had done, how she'd systematically pursued my boyfriend while pretending to be my supportive best friend, how she'd manipulated both Connor and me to engineer a situation where she got what she wanted without any of the social consequences of being the other woman. We included screenshots of messages and social media interactions that proved the timeline and the deliberate nature of her actions, and we prepared to post it to Facebook where all our mutual friends, college classmates, and social circles would see it. But before we published anything, I decided to give Amanda one chance to come clean and apologize, because some part of me still couldn't believe she'd be willing to let our friendship end like this over a guy she'd known for 2 months. I texted her and said, "We need to talk in person today." She responded, "I don't think that's a good idea, you're clearly still really upset, and I don't want to fight with you." I said, "I'm giving you one opportunity to explain yourself and apologize before I do something you're really not going to like. Meet me at our coffee shop in an hour or deal with the consequences." She showed up looking defensive and annoyed, like I was inconveniencing her by insisting on this conversation, and we sat down at a table in the back, where we'd had hundreds of conversations over the years about everything from boys to career dreams to family drama. I said, "I need you to explain to me how you thought it was okay to pursue Connor while he was dating me. I need you to walk me through your thought process and help me understand how someone who claims to be my best friend could do something so deliberately hurtful." Amanda sighed and said, "Look, I've already apologized, I don't know what else you want from me. Connor and I connected, it happens, and I'm sorry you got hurt, but I'm not going to apologize for following my heart." I said, "Following your heart? Amanda, you stalked his social media after I introduced you to him, you inserted yourself into our relationship, you flirted with him in front of me, and you built an emotional connection with him behind my back while pretending to be supportive of my recovery from Tyler. That's not following your heart, that's calculated manipulation." She rolled her eyes, actually rolled her eyes at me, and said, "You're being dramatic, Jessica. You dated Connor for 8 weeks, It's not like you were engaged or in love or anything serious. And honestly, maybe if you'd been less clingy and needy, he wouldn't have been looking for someone else. Did you ever think about that? That maybe the problem is you and your inability to keep a man interested. Her words hit me like a physical slap, and I realized in that moment that whatever friendship we'd had was completely dead, that the person sitting across from me was not someone who cared about me or valued our history together. I said, "So that's how you're going to play this? You're going to blame me for your betrayal and act like I'm the problem for being upset that my best friend stole my boyfriend?" She said, "I didn't steal anyone, Connor made his own choice, and maybe you should focus on why men keep leaving you instead of blaming everyone else for your failed relationships." That was it. That was the moment where any remaining sympathy or desire to salvage our friendship completely evaporated, and I pulled out my phone and showed her the post that Mark and I had prepared. I watched her face go pale as she read through it, seeing all the evidence of her manipulation laid out in detail, along with a narrative that made it very clear she'd deliberately targeted Connor and betrayed our friendship for her own selfish reasons. She said, "You can't post that, it'll ruin my reputation, people will think I'm a terrible person." I said, "Amanda, you are a terrible person, you just got really good at hiding it behind a supportive friend act. And now everyone is going to know exactly who you are." She tried to grab my phone, but I pulled it back and said, "You have one chance to get ahead of this. You can post your own apology, taking full responsibility for what you did and acknowledging how wrong it was, or I post this and you lose control of the narrative. Your choice." She sat there for a long moment, clearly weighing her options, and then she said, "Fine, I'll post something, but you have to promise not to post your version." I said, "I'll consider it, depending on what you say and whether it's actually honest or just more manipulation." She pulled out her phone and started typing, and I watched over her shoulder as she crafted a post that said, "I need to address something that's been weighing on me. I recently developed feelings for someone who was dating my best friend, and I pursued those feelings without properly considering how much it would hurt her. My actions were selfish and I betrayed someone who trusted me. I am deeply sorry for the pain I've caused and I take full responsibility for my choices. I understand if people lose respect for me because of this, and I accept those consequences." She showed me the draft and said, "Is this good enough?" I said, "Post it, and tag Connor so he's associated with it too. He doesn't get to escape responsibility for his part in this." She hesitated, clearly not wanting to drag Connor into the public acknowledgement, but I stared her down until she added his tag and hit publish. I watched the post go live, and within minutes the comments started rolling in, friends expressing shock and disappointment, people asking for more details, former classmates saying they'd always suspected Amanda was self-centered, but never realized she'd go this far. Connor called Amanda immediately. I could see her phone lighting up with his name, and she answered saying, "I had to. Jess was going to post something way worse if I didn't get ahead of it." I could hear him yelling through the phone, saying something about how this was going to affect his reputation, too, and why did she have to bring him into it. And I felt a grim satisfaction watching their relationship start to crumble under the weight of public scrutiny before it had even really begun. Amanda hung up on him and glared at me, saying, "I hope you're happy, you just destroyed my relationship before it even started." I said, "I didn't destroy anything, you did that yourself when you decided my boyfriend was worth more than our 11-year friendship." I left her sitting there at the coffee shop and went home feeling lighter than I had in weeks, like I'd finally taken back some control over a situation that had left me feeling powerless and victimized. Over the next few days, the fallout from Amanda's post was extensive and deeply satisfying. Several of our mutual friends reached out to me privately, apologizing for not seeing what was happening and expressing their disgust at Amanda's behavior. A few people who'd been in our college friend group posted their own comments about cutting ties with Amanda, saying they couldn't be friends with someone who'd betray their best friend so calculatedly. Amanda's social media presence basically imploded, with her losing followers and getting negative comments on every post she made, and she ended up making her accounts private and essentially going into hiding. Connor and Amanda's relationship didn't last more than a week after the public revelation, because once their connection was no longer this exciting secret thing, and was instead associated with betrayal and manipulation, whatever chemistry they'd had evaporated. Connor tried to reach out to me to apologize, sending a long text about how he'd gotten caught up in something that felt good in the moment, but that he now realized had been wrong from the start. I didn't respond, because I had no interest in absolving him of guilt or making him feel better about his choices, and I blocked his number so I wouldn't be tempted to engage with any future attempts at contact. As for Amanda, I heard through mutual friends that she'd been struggling with the social consequences of her actions, that she'd lost friendships and professional connections, because people didn't want to be associated with someone who'd proven themselves capable of such betrayal. She apparently tried to reach out to me multiple times through various channels, sending messages through other people, or creating new social media accounts to get around my blocks. But I ignored all of it because I had nothing left to say to her, and no interest in hearing any more of her justifications or half-hearted apologies. It's been about 3 weeks since everything blew up, and I'm finally starting to feel like myself again, like I'm not just a victim of other people's selfish choices, but someone who fought back and demanded accountability. I know some people think I went too far, that I should have just cut Amanda and Connor out of my life and moved on quietly, but those people don't understand that sometimes the only way to heal from betrayal is to make sure the people who hurt you face real consequences for their actions. Amanda thought she could have everything: steal my boyfriend, keep our friendship, and maintain her reputation as a good person, but she learned that you can't betray someone that deeply without losing something important in return. I've started therapy to process both breakups and the friend betrayal, trying to understand why I attract people who seem to think my feelings and well-being are disposable. And I'm working on rebuilding my sense of trust and self-worth that took such a beating over the past few months. I've also been reconnecting with other friends who proved themselves loyal during this nightmare, people who checked in on me and took my side without hesitation, and I'm learning to appreciate those relationships more and not take them for granted. Looking back, I don't regret anything I did to expose Amanda and hold her accountable. She deserved to lose her reputation and friendships, and Connor deserved to be associated with the betrayal publicly instead of getting to play victim or move on like nothing happened. They both made calculated choices to pursue their own happiness at my expense while I was still healing from heartbreak, and they both learned that actions have consequences, and that you can't just use people and discard them without eventually facing some kind of justice. Amanda wanted Connor, and now she doesn't have him or me or the friend group we'd built together over a decade, and honestly that feels like exactly the outcome she earned through her own selfish, cruel choices. I'm moving forward now, stronger and wiser and more careful about who I trust with my vulnerabilities. And I'm actually grateful, in a weird way, that Amanda revealed her true character before I wasted any more years on a friendship that was apparently conditional and disposable. Connor too showed me who he was, someone who was willing to monkey branch from one relationship to another without properly ending the first one, and I'm better off knowing that now rather than getting more invested and having it blow up later. So yeah, this whole nightmare was devastating and painful and made me question everything I thought I knew about friendship and loyalty. But it also taught me that I'm strong enough to stand up for myself and demand respect. And that sometimes the best revenge isn't moving on quietly, it's making sure everyone knows exactly what happened so the people who wronged you can't just rewrite the narrative and escape consequences. And now I'm finally ready to actually move forward with my life knowing that I didn't let Amanda and Connor just get away with what they did, and that feels like closure in a way that quietly walking away never could have given me.